This is Striking Aeternus, a third-person action puzzle solver that puts players into an engaging world that is full of traps, puzzles, and dangers. What will catch the player's attention is the player's ability to shift through the past and the future. Simply with having the power to jump through past and future would sound easy for the player to just get through all the sort of traps that lay before him? No. Like, just for past and future, there's different traps that have been set there and have remained there during the whole time, so it kind of gives the player a challenge. This guy that you're playing as here in Striking Eternus is known as the Last Traveler. There's a lot that's going on within this character's life, but it wants the player to get through this engaging story to figure out who he is and why he's doing all this. With having the world corrupted and everything, and the player not even being able to go through his own time, he has to jump through the past and the future just to get through all these traps so he can get through the next levels of the game. As you play through the game and seeing how corrupted everything is with all the traps, lasers, and everything else that's set before the player, it's your job to figure out how to get the last travel back to the present so you can figure out to stop all this before it ever happens.
Shifting was done by applying an offset translation to the player pawn and making two maps inside of one UDK map. The main mechanic in our game, shifting, will allow you to solve puzzles and avoid obstacles by pressing the R key to shift to alternate timelines. You will not be able to do this if you are stopped by something in the alternate time period and a message will be displayed on screen. You also must make sure that your charge bar in the upper left corner is in the green area in order to shift. If it is in the yellow area, you will be unable to shift, and it also has the ability to overheat if you do not shift in a certain amount of time, causing the player to die and have to start over at a previous checkpoint. Shifting when your armor is not charged results in a message displayed on screen saying armor is not ready. You can use your shifting ability to avoid traps and solve puzzles in order to advance to the next checkpoint. But if you shift while on top of the trap in the other timeline, you will die.
Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany Grant and I will walk you through the traps that we have set up in our game. Currently we have 4 different types of traps: fire, laser, pits, and mines. Currently all of these traps kills the player on contact, and they were created in Unreal Script rather than Kismet. Fire traps were made in Cascade and uses the fire volume created in Unreal Script. Initially we created a trigger in Unreal Script, but it changed to a volume as it provides a little more control and allows us to perfectly shape it around the fire. Lasers were originally created with Cascade, but we later changed that because we would have to create a volume for each laser, and we felt that was too much additional work that needed to be done. So we had to simplify it. I created a mesh in Blender 3D and then imported it into UDK and applied a material to it that we had created. Pits were created within Unreal Script, and they can take different shapes and forms. Most pits the player can easily jump over, but the majority requires the player to come up with a plan to bypass them. Currently for the mines we are using a placeholder mesh, but we plan to change that later on. All traps were created within Unreal Script, and we plan to create more traps later on.
Yes, the Last Traveler will face many challenges. He's able to shift to avoid them, crouch, jump, double jump, and even swim. But that's not all. Interacting with objects is also a big part of the puzzles. Most basic objects to interact with are the pickups, items the player can collect throughout the game, like the keys. They usually come in 2 colors, green and yellow. If the avatar is carrying the key that matches the color of a certain door, he passes, otherwise he's blocked. We also have white decoy keys, uncharged, that don't actually work anywhere. The player can only hold one item at a time. Collecting an item just requires interacting with it through the left mouse button or the E key. Same is used to drop items as well as exchanging an item being carried with the one available to be picked. Containers can be used to store items, but like the player inventory itself, they can only hold one at a time. Retrieving, storing, and exchanging items with a container works similarly as with items on the ground. Containers introduce an investigation element to the puzzles, as they actually might be hiding items from the player's immediate view. Some containers are persisted throughout different time periods, introducing an interesting new dynamic.
Striking Aeternus features a dynamic environment that changes as the player shifts through time and space. Some environments and set pieces don't take place on Earth, and our creative team strives to design extraterrestrial, otherworldly, and alternate realities. We want each level to have its own unique atmosphere to the point where the paradox worlds have a personality of their own. Striking Aeternus takes place in a time of erratic weather patterns and hostile climates throughout all dimensions. This behavior is the result of unstable conditions within the time and space, caused by shifting through dimensions with the Viator ultimatum. Each time the player shifts, it creates a time paradox that disrupts the natural order of the physical world. As the player progresses through the game towards the last level, it will be made more abundantly clear that reality is imploding, as dimensions begin to become more impossible to tell apart. The player is attempting to prevent the destruction of the space-time continuum before it collapses in on itself by stopping the Viator ultimatum from ever being developed.
We currently have 6 unique levels that the player must progress through in order to complete our game. The main goal when designing these environments is to present the player with interesting three-dimensional play spaces that work well in the third-person perspective, as well as our environmental traps and puzzles. The gameplay you're currently seeing is from our prototype, which is actually set in Frozen Sands, the second paradox of our game. Each level is considered to be a different paradox in time, and by completing a level, you're essentially fixing that paradox. There are several different environments throughout Striking Aeternus, most noticeably when exploring outdoors. Frozen Sands offers a cold, icy climate in the future and a dry desert setting in the past. At this time, each paradox has 2 distinct puzzles in it along with the constant environmental traps placed throughout the level. Open Veins is our 4th paradox and is themed around a hospital scene. The first puzzle in this level requires the player to go back to the past and make adjustments to a large boulder's path, so that when it rolls down the hill, it will be in a different location in the future, busting the hospital entrance down. These are just a few examples of the levels and puzzles that are to come with Striking Aeternus.